Hey guys, it's your boy APT Songs here, and I am here with another review for you. I just saw Avengers Endgame last night, and some people wanted to know what my thoughts were on that, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a review of this movie starting right now. Now, for those of you that have not seen the movie, I don't know how to do a spoiler-free review, so I'm going to give you a few seconds now to click away from this video if you have not seen Avengers Endgame. Go ahead, just, subscribe, click like, but then get the heck out of here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into what I liked about the movie as well as some flaws that I saw in the movie, and then give you guys my overall rating of should you see it or should you not. So for starters, I really just want to give props to the Russo brothers for being able to even do this kind of movie. You know, last year with Infinity War, then this year with Endgame, they have created essentially 5.5 hours worth of content that basically summarizes and ties up all the ends of what's come from the movies before that. And that's a hard task. Like, that's never been done in Hollywood before. It's been done with threequels and sometimes like 4 or 5 movies, but rarely is it like we are summing up 21 different other movies. That in itself is an accomplishment that should be applauded. With that said, given all that they had to tie up, it could have been a thing where they completely just dropped the ball and where they, sacrifice certain storylines and things don't end up looking as neat as they do. And so the fact that this came together in a relatively decent package is pretty darn good. So for those of you that saw Infinity War last year, you know how this movie starts out, because in that movie, of course, Thanos, the big bad villain from that movie, was able to get all the Infinity Stones and get rid of half of the entire universe's population. So the beginning of this movie starts off with the remaining Avengers, which are basically the 6 Avengers that we started off with in the first Avengers movie, along with some other ones like War Machine and Rocket the Raccoon from Guardians are still there as well, and Nebula is still there, but they're all trying to cope with this loss. And some of them are in different places, some of them are on Earth. Tony and Nebula are still out in space in a spaceship somewhere. Captain Marvel is somewhere in the galaxy that she eventually comes in to help save part of the day. But it starts off in that place where it's like they actually lost. They actually didn't win a fight. And that's an example of one of the things that I like about this movie, is that there were so many different surprise elements that happened. For one, I like that it started off with Hawkeye, because we didn't get to see his version of how this happened at all in any kind of movie. So the fact that they start off with him and how he lost his family to Thanos is already letting you know this kind of movie is going to be devastating, it's going to be full of surprises, and it's going to keep throwing them at you during the course of the movie. And that's not the only surprise. For starters, the fact that Thanos, they connect up with Thanos in the first 20 to 30 minutes and kill him off, I'm thinking they're gonna spend the entire movie trying to get back to this dude and they ain't off him. So the fact that they did it so quickly in the movie, my thought was like, where does this go now? Like, they killed him, but they don't have the stones. How is this going to resolve itself? And I thought that was a very interesting choice, because as an audience member, it didn't let me know how the movie was going to go. Because now I'm thinking, okay, the movie's over. What could they possibly do for the next 2.5 hours that's going to be worth seeing, or is going to help them get back to where things are at some level back to normal? Another great set of surprises that I found in this movie was just the insane amount of cameos. So this ends up being a time travel heist movie where they try to basically go back in time and get the stones from previous points in history when they were still out there and unfound yet. So that means they have to actually go back to previous movies and find these stones. And in the process of that, they end up running into a lot of previous characters that we love from all these other movies, some of which may have died off, some of which just we didn't see beyond that movie. And so that becomes a nice little thing where you can see, oh, I remember this person from that movie, and oh, this person's still there. And then even in the present time, there are still characters that survived that we're able to see, like Valkyrie. I forget who the Blue Rock character was in Thor Ragnarok, but he was there too. And it's just nice to see the people that actually did get to survive the snap. So that was kind of cool as well. And of course, we can't forget the wonderful Stan Lee cameo. This is his, as far as we know, this is his final on-screen cameo before he passed away last year. And it's nice to see that they did it by giving him like a throwback, that they use the de-aging stuff to be able to make him look like a younger version of himself, which in the 60s or 70s would have still been like kind of old, but not like 90s old. So his cameo in there was really, really nice. And it wasn't going to be surprising to see him, but it was surprising to see the way in which they did his cameo, which was also really great. Another thing I liked about this movie was the pacing. This movie is 3 hours long, and it can be a trap to like have a movie that long and then have it where it's just like, it just feels like it's too long or like not enough's happening. But I thought the pacing, surprisingly, was okay. In the I do not like section of this, I'll get into where I thought things could have been improved, but I never found myself like falling asleep or staring at the screen like, man, this is so boring as crap. I thought in terms of the length of it, it was the perfect length. Like, it was totally fine with it being 3 hours and 1 minute. Another thing I liked were the action sequences. Marvel's always been great at putting together great action sequences. The fights that they have, whether it's between the characters themselves or between an army of bad guys, it always, for me at least, paces out very, very good in terms of like, you know, giving a chance for each character to have their moment to shine. And especially when you get to the ending battle where there's like 70 billion characters on screen, might be an exaggeration. But yeah, it's nice to be able to see like, okay, we still get to see, you know, Spider-Man have his powers, we get to see Black Panther do his thing, we get to see Tony and Hulk and stuff do their bits very well. So in terms of the fight sequences, absolutely fantastic. Minor complaint though, I wish there had been more of them, because the ones that we got were great, but there was a lot of parts in between where it's more about character building. And that's all fine, that's all great, but I thought that Infinity War had a ridiculous amount of decently put together fighting sequences, and this one had a little bit less. And finally, what I really, really liked is, honestly, I like the way that they went about revisiting old movies. Now, I mentioned that a little bit earlier in terms of like, you know, being able to see guest cameos and appearances and stuff like that, but also, not even that, the fact that they went back in time and actually reframed some events that happened, or they went back and like, they showed you stuff that you didn't see in those first movies. Like, there's a scene from the first Avengers where when they go back in time to 2012 when that movie came out, you see Hulk like randomly smashing his car to bits. We didn't see that. Or that iconic shot at the end where they're all standing over Loki, like saying, hey, we got you, we're getting the stone back. There's a whole sequence that happens after that that they put in this movie that it's just entertaining to be like, oh my God, there's more of that movie. It's almost like seeing like a bonus extra that you get like some 6 or 7 years later in this movie. So that was kind of entertaining to go back and see that changed up, to see a little bit more about what happened prior to, you know, them meeting Quill in Guardians of the Galaxy, to be able to go back to Thor 2 to see his mom still alive and then them have a conversation together. Like, those are the kind of things that if you're a fan of Marvel movies, it's pretty much like fan service. I feel like some of the things that they did in terms of like, oh, we're gonna go back and show you parts of this movie, or we're gonna show you these characters again, it wasn't necessarily like important to the plot, more so than just like, hey, we're gonna say thank you for watching these movies by letting you go back and revisit some of these characters that you love so much in the course of these movies. So, as much as those things were great, and I did like this movie, there were definitely some things in the movie that I felt could have been improved upon that I didn't like so much. For starters, I said before that 3 hours did not seem like a long time, and it was not. I thought that, like I said, overall the pacing for it was great. But with that said, there were definitely sections of the movie where I was watching it and I thought to myself, you know, they said in the interviews that they had to make this thing 3 hours, and they really could have cut some stuff. You know, I direct and edit things myself here on this channel, obviously, and so there were certain things that they kept in that they could have like cut out, and it wouldn't have like hurt the movie at all. For example, you know, in this movie, Thor, for the most part, is like a drunk, bumbling idiot because he feels so bad about not being able to handle Thanos right away. So a lot of his dialogue is just him rambling on and on and on, and certain times I was just like, yeah, they could have cut like 2 or 3 lines here. Or there's scenes where, like, you know, the Russo brothers are very good at setting up a mood or trying to like make you feel a certain type of way about something. But some of their like pan camera shots, or they're just like holding on to this for like a longer beat than they need to. Some of those things could have been scaled back a bit and it would have been cut. Like, you could have made this a solid 2.5 hour movie and still had the same effect. I also thought that the middle part of this movie is like, it's a lot of time where you're just character building or reestablishing characters, and you know, they're going on a journey of some kind or whatever. And some of those things could have been taken out as well. And again, it wouldn't have affected the movie overall. And again, this is not to say that they couldn't have kept it at 3 hours, but some of the choices that they decided to keep in as part of that 3 hours could have been cut out, or it could have been replaced with other stuff. Which is actually my second complaint, which is that for as long as the movie is, we spend a lot of time with the main Avengers cast, and I don't feel like there's enough time spent with some of the other cast members. You know, when they come back into the film finally, after Hulk does the snap, and then all the characters that disappeared from the previous movie come back, it's like 20 minutes left of the movie. So we don't get to spend a lot of time with Black Panther, with Spider-Man, with even Captain Marvel. Like, she's in it at the beginning for a little bit, and then she goes away and then comes back. And again, for 3 hours of the time, some of the stuff that they decided to keep in could have been sacrificed to allow us as audience members to spend more time with these other characters, especially one like Spider-Man, who's going to have his own movie coming out in like 2 months. Like, it would have been nice to kind of like had him a bit more into the mix. Another problem with the movie is that this movie does have a lot of plot holes. Like I said earlier, I think that they did a lot of fan service choices in terms of like going back to previous movies and seeing other characters. But in the course of that, in order for some of those things to be able to happen, they either had to abandon some of the rules that they have established in previous films or even in this film, or they had to just say like, well, screw it, we're gonna just do what we wanna do. So like, you know, with time travel movies in particular, there's always a set of rules that are established. And so, you know, they set up certain rules for certain things in the movie to happen with time travel, but then later on, when they need other things to happen, all of a sudden those rules no longer apply. And so again, I'm not complaining because I enjoyed the movie, but for people that are sticklers to, oh my God, I gotta have my plot points exactly match up the whole time in order for me to enjoy it, you might be a little bit frustrated when you realize that certain things that you thought should be there or certain answers that you should get either are not there or don't happen in the way that they should based on the logic that this universe has created for itself. Another interesting thing to note is that, you know, we spend most of the movie with the core group of Avengers, which is fine. We get to really know them really, really well. But the problem arises when they finally do bring in the other Avengers that were snapped in the first one. Like I said earlier, it's like, you know, we don't get to spend a lot of time with them, but also their entrance into the movie, honestly, it wasn't a big enough payoff for me. Like, I feel like Black Widow's death, I feel like Tony's death, and I feel like even like Captain America, you know, finally aging into the person that he would have been had he lived all these years. I thought those were such powerful choices, but for some reason I felt like when the other Avengers that disappeared came back into the fold, it was just kind of like this, oh look, here we are. And there wasn't really enough like emotional payoff like that. This is partly why I say I wish they would have come into it earlier. Like, there could have been a way where they, you know, you kind of see if they're in a parallel universe or if they get introduced somehow, but it's just all of a sudden like them just suddenly snapping them that they're there. It didn't make me feel like I was all that happy to see them, because up to this point I've been spending time with these other characters that I've gotten to know well. So it's almost like if you get to a party at like 10 o'clock and then just as the party's about to end at like 1:30, other people show up, you're like, oh, well, I'm glad you're here, but the party's almost over. And that's kind of what their entrance into Endgame felt like. I was glad to see them. I was glad that they got to fight on the battlefield for that final battle. And that final battle, by the way, is very well done in terms, like I said, in terms of the pacing, in terms of seeing other characters, in terms of being able to, like, you know, just have a mush of people and see their powers used and whatever. But their entrance left something to be desired. It was almost like if they hadn't shown up for the movie, I'd have been fine. So whatever. Lastly, my final complaint about the movie is that this movie, as original as we like to think that it was, really did copy a lot of beats from previous Avenger movies. For example, their whole second act basically is a copy of, hey, let's assemble the team together and get them back so we can do Avengers stuff, which is like what they did in the first movie. As well as them doing the whole, hey, let's split up into teams and do these various things and go to various places to try to right these wrongs, which they did in Infinity War. So you have 3 teams that set up, let's go to New York, let's go to Thor's planet of Asgard, let's go back to Guardians. Like, it just, oh, this team is splitting up to do stuff again. Like, and it's not that I was mad at those things happening, but when I saw them happening, I was like, oh, this is that thing where they do this. Oh, this is just like that movie where they did this. And I thought that some of those beats could have been changed or altered a bit to where maybe they go back in time to get the stones, but they do it in a different way other than just the whole like split teams up or, oh, let's go find our Avengers. Like, that stuff's been done enough to where I could have seen a more original way of that happening and probably been a bit more satisfied in terms of how all that was going. But in terms of how they executed it, absolutely great. Overall though, I'd say that this movie did a great job as a series finale to what we currently know as the MCU in the first 3 phases. I thought that the way Black Widow's arc, Tony's arc, and Captain America's arc ended were very great choices, and they weren't safe choices. You know, I did not expect at all for Black Widow to be the one to sacrifice herself and die for the Soul Stone. You know, that was a really powerful moment in the movie. The way that Tony went out in terms of him realizing that he had to be the sacrifice. And that's the thing too. I think what's great is that in Infinity War, you know, Thanos knew that in order to get your goal, sometimes that meant sacrificing the things that you love. And the reason that the Avengers lost in the first one was because they were trying to save everybody, including themselves, and that resulted in their downfall. So in this movie, I like that the Avengers evolved to where they finally understood that they don't all get to make it. And sometimes sacrifices have to be made in the short term for the good of everybody else. So Black Widow and Tony sacrificing themselves, recognizing that this had to be done as a means to save the entire universe, that alone makes this movie feel like an evolution, feel like a growth in how comic book movies are made, okay? Despite the flaws that I thought I had in terms of like, you know, some things could have been taken out, in terms of being able to see more characters, I still feel like this is definitely one of the better comic book hero movies. I don't think it tops Civil War for me. I don't even think it really tops Infinity War, because I just seeing the bad guy win and that be the end of the movie, that is something that rarely gets seen, and so that in and of itself is an anomaly. But I would definitely put this at the higher end of Marvel movies that I enjoy, and I would give this movie an 8 out of 10. I think that it's definitely worth seeing. You need to see it in the theater on the weekend. Don't spoil it for anybody. If you've seen this, if you're watching this, it means you've already seen it. So be like me. I'm not going on social media and ruining this for people, unless they're my enemies or whatever. Let people go in fresh. I avoided as many previews and as many reviews as I possibly could, so I could go in fresh, and I enjoyed the experience so much more for it, and definitely let other people have that experience as well. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this review. If you want to see more reviews from me, feel free to write in the comments what movies you'd like me to review. I see a lot of movies, they're upcoming movies, or movies that are already out, so write me, let me know, and I will catch you guys on the next review. I'm out. Peace.